You know, commentaries.
That sounds dumb.
We need something better. We need to be ambitious. Make something that will appeal to people, to everyone. That will reach every peak and valley and compel all nations to come together and push for a brighter future. Who's with me?
I'm tired.
That sounds like work. Fuck work.
What about dumb Pokemon guy?
Yeah!
So you're the new starter. Man, people are going to expect big things from you. You know, you're probably going to be the most popular. Because, you know, the fire type is always the best. So yeah, I hope you the best of luck.
Dude, I'm that speed boost motherfucker, and I even know that's nowhere close to being the case. Especially in your generation. The grass type is an actual sweeper. Get back to punching Snorlax's scrub.
Oh yeah, just one more thing I wanted to tell you. If I find out you evolve into another fucking fire-fighting Pokemon, I will literally come and find you and put you in the PC box number 30, next to Magikarp.
I forfeited my ability to express more than one emotion when I sacrificed my soul to the Zionist cabal of Poketubers. It's because of this that I have to rely on voice modulation and bad keyframing to feign a remote existence of personality in my voice. Yeah!
Oh man, what acting school did you go to, Dobbs? I should switch my major and follow in your glorious footsteps.
So yeah, I'll see you later, man. And don't forget, you won't forget.
I originally saw this joke in a comic strip online, difference being it was Fennekin and Blaziken instead of Litten and Emboar. So let me just go over every reason your joke is complete and utter trash. The first is the fact that the pattern of firefighting was already broken, which doesn't entirely ruin the joke on its own, and the leaked images would lead one to believe that Incineroar is fighting type since he's a pro wrestler, even though the leak shows evidence that he's a heel, which is why he's a dark type, you stupid idiot. But the reveal for the typing happened the same day your video came out, which chalk that up to bad timing, sure. But then there's the other half of the gag. So you're using Emboar as the one to threaten Litten's originality. That just doesn't work. Emboar's the reason the joke exists at all. Second, Blaziken did it originally because Blaziken is the one with a reason to be angry about it. And third, and this is the biggest problem, Emboar fucking sucks! The only way this joke even comes close to working is by playing off the fact that both Emboar and Incineroar are wrestlers. And even that's a fucking stretch since Emboar is specifically a sumo wrestler. Not a professional wrestler, you stupid!
This doesn't make sense in a separate way either. Like, at the beginning, Emboar says this.
So you're the new starter. Man, people are going to expect big things from you.
But why would he be the one to say that since he's from, what, 4 games ago? Wouldn't it make more sense to have F.O.X say this? Hell, you could probably make a more original play on that comic if you used her, since you could make it out as F.O.X not wanting the Litten line to fuck up the series, moving away from having so many fire-fighting starters, since F.O.X is a fire-psychic starter that broke this trend after Emboar.
Such a short intro, I'm surprised with how slow that felt. Slow keyframing can work. I know, I've done it myself, but this makes it feel so sluggish that a shuckle could finish a mile before it's over.
What is going on, guys? This is Dobbs here, bringing you another Pokemon video.
I like how he almost has to dwell on that for a second.
Pokemon video.
It's like he had to stop to remember what video he was making. Yeah, we read the title, Socrates.
Do you think he got amnesia as he was recording his lines and had to try and keep up the illusion that he knows what he's talking about?
I don't fucking know.
And in this video, I'm going to show you the top 10 strongest starter Pokemon of all time. But there's a twist. This video will not only include the mainstream game starter Pokemon, but rather it will include all the starter Pokemon that we've seen throughout the anime, manga, and even other Pokemon games. And just a disclaimer, this is completely my opinion.
My opinion blocks me from all criticism.
Can I just start calling this the refined butthole fallacy? Oh, wait, crap, was I supposed to sing that?
Also, Pokemon such as Blaziken and Greninja won't be included in this list because the hidden abilities that make them so competitively powerful aren't obtainable as a starter Pokemon, only through an event.
Then just don't count the event versions. They don't have to be excluded entirely just because there's an entirely separate non-starter version of them that's more powerful.
And if you're trying to say they aren't powerful enough to make the list without them, I call bullshit. Blaziken and Greninja are still OU caliber without those abilities being brought into the equation, which I'm sure you could debate not being true, but at the same time, Torchic is still a starter choice in Oris, where you get a Mega Stone for your starter on Route 120 from Steven. Guess what ability Mega Blaziken always has? Your argument is completely null and void. And of course, there's the fact that you're including the anime, which is stupid, but I can include Blaziken at the very least by way of the anime as well, namely May's Blaziken, who is a highly competent battler even if May rarely does straight up battles. In fact, considering the fact that contests in the anime involve actually battling and looking good doing it, mind you, then consider that Blaziken has to compete while maintaining a certain amount of flair, probably more Charlotte than Rick. Imagine if this Blaziken didn't need to be flashy. By the way, I could totally bullshit Greninja on here since you use him in the Sun and Moon demo, pleb.
And these are the only two things for groundworks for what to expect. You could argue that it seems pretty self-explanatory for the rules and it doesn't need explaining. It can be inferred that only the very first Pokemon a trainer gets counts and you seem to go by this for the rule in the list, but since this isn't even mentioned at all in the disclaimer, then it makes it even more bullcrap that the other starters like Greninja and Blaziken could very easily make the list. After all, they are starter Pokemon, and you pick starters from the games later. In fact, you can include a lot of different starters, like any of Ash's starter Pokemon he gets throughout the seasons.
So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and without further ado, let's get started. Starting off this list, we have Brox's Onix.
When I clicked on this video, I didn't expect the first entry to be Onix. I wouldn't have as much of a problem with this if you didn't advertise it the way that you did. Thumbnail as starter Pokemon from the games. Title doesn't indicate anything weird. You're led to expect that this is about what most people think starters are. Hey kids, welcome to How to Be So Confusing You Rack Up 1,000 Dislikes on a video about fucking Pokemon.
Hey, you gotta be specific, Ski. Over 1,300 dislikes on a Pokemon video.
Brox's fucking.
Now, like we all know, Brox's Onix and Later to be Steelix has always been one of his most powerful Pokemon. But you're probably asking yourself, why does his Onix deserve a spot on this list? Well, let's start from the beginning. Like all Pokemon trainers, Brock received his Onix from his father, Flint, when he turned 10 years old. It is said in the anime that Brock was a medic for the Pewter City Pokemon Center for a few years. So that would mean that he took over the gym when he was just around 13 years old. Now, let's put that in perspective. There are only 8 Pokemon gyms in the entire Kanto region, and only those who are powerful enough to determine if a trainer is worthy to face the Elite Four or not can lead them. So that would mean that Brox's Onix was powerful enough to help him become a Pokemon gym leader.
Yeah, the first one. The actual weakest one out of all of them.
Now I know what you're thinking. Brox's Onix was defeated by Ash's Pikachu in the anime and was a low level in the Pokemon games. Well, first of all, Ash only won that battle because he accidentally triggered the sprinklers in the Pokemon gym, which caused Onix to become very weak. And for the games, it is proven in the anime short Pokemon Origins that gym leaders scale their Pokemon to be an even match against their challenger. So for all we know, that Onix we fought in the first generation games wasn't actually his starter.
Then that just creates an inconsistency then. You can't just start merging the anime and the games together when they follow two separate continuities. We have nothing to go off of that these are separate or the same Onix. Leave the games out of it. This could just be to bring up that consistency, but it just bites you hard in the end.
Not to mention Origins is an anime, not the games. And it's not the same as the games, since Origins has mega dark bullshit Charizard, and the games didn't have that, on top of a bunch of other things.
But for the fact that Onix was strong enough to give Brock enough authority to be a gym leader at only 13 years old, I chose Brox's Onix for number 10.
Why is this surprising in a game where 2 10-year-olds fight to be the strongest in the entire region?
Not like this is a rare thing either. Roxanne from Hoenn is young too, and she's also the first gym leader who was also rock type. Brock ain't a special snowflake.
No, that is a lie. Follow RockSnakesCircle12 on Tumblr, he is very special.
The story of generations 1 through 4 also indicate that Gold and Silver takes place 3 years after Red and Blue. So, going off Ski's point about 2 10-year-olds fighting to be the very best like no one ever was, one of those 10-year-olds, Blue, became a gym leader at least by the age of 13. And not the shitty first gym leader either. The fucking last one. And if you're gonna mix the games with the anime like that, then we have to do it here too. And on top of that, we've got Bugsy, Tate and Liza, Clement, all of whom are under the age of 16 and are gym leaders. So, if we knew their starters, would they be even higher on the list, since most of them actually stayed as gym leaders?
Coming at number 9, we have Skitty from Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Blue.
Yeah, in one of the games. Like, if you wanted an idea of the strongest in Mystery Dungeon, wouldn't it make more sense to get the strongest one overall in all the games?
This also doesn't even count as a starter Pokemon. Yeah, you start as a Pokemon, but it's not in the same vein as every other entry on the list. Starter Pokemon implies that the trainer was given the Pokemon. Considering that the player is the Pokemon in question, it makes it flimsy at best and completely wrong at worst. I'm going to have to get out my blender in order to get this to make any sense.
Now, if you ever watched a speedrun of this game, you would quickly notice that the speedrunner usually uses Skitty and Squirtle, and there's a good reason for that. According to Pokemon speedrunner Worcester, Skitty is definitely the best option when trying to figure out which starter to choose from. The reason that Skitty is so useful when playing the game is because it has the moves Tail Whip and Leer.
Squirtle also gets Tail Whip, and Pikachu, and Eevee, and Totodile gets Leer, and so does Cyndaquil.
And even if it's because Skitty has both of these moves and the others don't, the reason a speedrunner said that Skitty was a good choice for speedrunning is because you don't have time to rely on befriending other Mons in order to be able to progress. And going back to your previous entry, holy shit, at least you made the point that Brock's Onix, not Brox's Onix, you illiterate chucklefuck, achieved something that required it to be powerful. Skitty's just a utility choice, so why is it more powerful than Brock's Onix?
These two moves are very important when battling bosses in the game. Also, Skitty's a normal type, so Double Slap gets Stab, which if you didn't know, means same type attack boost. So for example, if a water type Pokemon uses a water move, the damage gets boosted an extra 50%.
They all get stab moves that match their type, it's just that Skitty gets them earlier. But so does Eevee, and Meowth, and you get my point.
And this is a small nitpick, but same type attack bonus. Double check your information, you mop-haired overrated Pikachu or frick!
Also, Skitty has access to Attract.
All of them can learn Attract through TM though. Also, as an argument against Skitty, even if it does get stab early, it never gets a super effective boost from any of its base moves except for one, which is late game, which, need I remind you, has a bigger damage bonus than stab with a double instead of just 1.5. You know who does get an early game move that can get a super effective bonus against certain types early on, along with stab moves, and can learn Tail Whip? Meowth. Not to mention there are tons of non-normal Mons in the roster that can learn moves that are both stab and can be super effective at the same time early on, and can learn Tail Whip or Leer as well.
Someone else said it was the best, so that means it obviously has to be the best for this list. Considering, you know, this is totally his own opinion.
Hey guys, welcome to my someone else's opinion list.
Which can completely immobilize a Pokemon when battling against them, or when trying to escape a tough situation. So with this great move pool, Squirtle goes hand in hand with Skitty, because he can collab very well with a set of moves he learns very early on, which can be very deadly.
Wait, very deadly? As in very strong? So wouldn't that make Squirtle stronger? Yeah, this isn't confusing at all.
If Skitty has to rely on another Pokemon to be the strongest, where does that leave Skitty?
So for those reasons, I chose Skitty for number 9. For number 8, I chose Squirtle
Oh, okay, then never mind.
from Pokemon Red and Blue.
But what? Okay, so you hint at it being stronger than Skitty in Mystery Dungeon, which I also somewhat proved, and then you put it above Skitty, but from an entirely different game. Yeah, the problems with the way you structured this are really starting to creep in now. This is the main factor that kneecaps the entire list. How on earth can you quantify how something is stronger than another while having to pull from tons of separate and conflicting sources?
Not to mention, the information making it completely unfair to even judge these Pokemon. Also, why just the first evolution? It hasn't reared its ugly head completely yet. But why not talk about Blastoids or the line as a whole? Because yeah, a Squirtle can totally take on a fully evolved Nidoking or Persian. You end up just talking about Squirtle by itself, disregarding its evolutions. Probably not your intent, but it just shows more of your garbage writing.
That's right, Squirtle is actually the better starter from the original Pokemon games. Now I know what you're thinking. How in the heck is Squirtle better than Charmander? Because obviously Charmander is a better starter Pokemon from the original games. Well, although Charmander is the most popular Pokemon from the trio, he isn't the most convenient when playing the Pokemon Red and Blue games. And here's why. A program called Wolframe Alpha, which is an extremely smart calculator, recently obtained all the data for all the current Pokemon. A scientist named Kyle Hill decided to test the database and place the 3 starters against all the gym leaders' Pokemon. After a lot of math and equations, it was determined that Squirtle is scientifically the best choice when playing through the game, because Squirtle always came on top when it came to type and move advantage when facing the trainer's Pokemon. Pretty crazy, right?
Well, yeah, I guess if he's mathematically proven to be the best choice in that game, then that's a fair point. But I have a small question. Where's Kyle Hill's results? Surely you're not just gonna go, trust me guys is proof, right? Let me check the description. Hang on. Nope. Fucking Christ. When saying there's facts, it's a good idea to show the facts.
Oh, and by the way, this is the only thing he talks about. Yep, if I remember correctly, this was an opinion list. That doesn't mean you can't bring up facts, but that can't be the only thing you bring up and then move on. You don't actually bring anything of your own to the table here. You just say, here's some scientific research that someone else did, and then move on. This isn't Kyle Hill's list. This is your list. If you are going to claim this is absolutely objective science, by the way, why are so many entries that are much more subjective above it? Makes a lot of sense.
Coming at number 7, we have Totodile for Pokemon Gold and Silver. Now, out of all the starter Pokemon from the mainstream games, Totodile is among the few that can completely sweep every single Pokemon they come across. He's so strong, in fact, his early game is without a doubt the best out of all the starter Pokemon.
Gold and Silver are very easy games in general though. The only way you really have to worry about early game is if you choose Chikorita, and even then it's surprisingly a lot easier than, say, going against Brock while starting with Charmander or Pikachu. All you really need to counter Faulkner is a decent rock type. Meanwhile, it's considerably more difficult to find a mon that can handle Brock well unless you have a Bulbasaur or Squirtle. So yeah, Totodile is more powerful because the game it comes from is easier. Absolutely perfect, flawless 7.8 out of 10.
He can easily go against higher level Pokemon without even breaking a sweat. Now you're probably asking yourself, what makes Totodile so powerful? Well, the move Rage is definitely a key factor on what makes Totodile insanely good. What this move does exactly is that it builds attack bonuses every time a Pokemon uses it consecutively. So basically, the more enraged the Pokemon is, the more damage the Pokemon will deal.
Yeah, but Rage starts off with 20 power and you have to keep using it every turn to utilize that damage increase. And since we are talking strictly Gen 2 here, Rage also no longer boosts your attack stat one stage every turn like it used to in Gen 1. Bite and Slash are much better for it in general because of their higher base damage and you don't have to feel locked into the move at all. Plus, Bite has a chance of flinching and Slash has a chance for a critical hit. And you know, if you let that poor Totodile evolve, it'll have a much greater attack stat.
Not that anything Brooke just said matters, because Rage does not even work that way! Rage builds when you are hit, not when you use it. If you can't do enough research to know how the move you're saying is part of what makes your choice good even fucking works, then how am I supposed to take your opinion seriously?
Hey! I spent 5 whole minutes on Bulbapedia to get that information.
With this move, it makes it easy going against strong gym leaders in the early game. Yes, even Whitney with that overpowered Miltank.
Or you could just grind through Sprout Tower with Cyndaquil, which can basically one-shot any Bellsprout, and by the end of it you can just mow down the gym. And you don't even have to worry about forcing yourself to be hit to build up Rage. This is before we even get into the fact that Totodile is predominant in attack, which is sort of a problem when literally every stab move it gets is special in Gold and Silver. Meanwhile, Cyndaquil is predominant in special attacks, so it doesn't have this problem.
And Miltank is a defensive Pokemon. Oops. Good luck trying to hit that physical wall with a physical attack. Let me know how well that works out for you. Oh, and Chikorita would know Poison Powder and Reflect at that point. And Reflect halves all physical damage. And also Cyndaquil can burn, which also lowers physical damage. Totodile is literally the worst starter to go against and fight Whitney.
Another key factor that makes Totodile very useful is his move pool. Totodile gets a powerful Stab Surf, Earthquake, and Strength to abuse his high attack.
Yeah, but it doesn't learn it through level up. You have to spend your precious TMs on it if you want it to learn any powerful moves. Check again at that special attack set on Totodile. It would not be nearly as effective as, say, Aqua Tail, that it learns in later generations by level up. Sure, its special attack stat does get better as it evolves, but it's outclassed by its attack stat. My Empoleon would like to have a word with you.
He thinks Surface physical. How adorable.
The fuck did I say about knowing how moves work?
Along with that, his Ice Punch is very useful when going against your rivals Bayleaf and Lance's Dragonite.
Even though Typhlosion specials are more effective. Oh yeah, Ice Punch was special in Gen 2. Yeah, it is dumb.
Oh, so you are talking about the line as a whole. Then why don't you just clean off that windshield? It's very dangerous to drive around with it being dirty like that. I can only let Jesus take the wheel so many times, Dobbs.
Just overall, he's a very powerful Pokemon. The reason why Cyndaquil and Chikorita aren't really viable is because Cyndaquil has very low defense and has an inferior move pool. Chikorita, on the other hand, doesn't really have a lot of type coverage, and her weakness really cripples her against the first couple gyms.
What did Hunter say earlier? These games are easier and Chikorita isn't completely screwed like everyone seems to think it is. And Cyndaquil's move pool? You're one to talk. Totodile's level up move pool is very small by itself, and if you want it to be good, you have to use TMs on it. Cyndaquil gets Flamethrower leveling up, which plays with its special attack stat much better than Totodile's stab moves it learns. Even if Hydro Pump is a powerful move, it still doesn't play to Totodile's strengths. Going to TMs Cyndaquil can learn, you get things like Earthquake, Thunder Punch, Hyper Beam, and Fire Blast. It gets good TMs too.
Coming at number 6, we have Mudkip for Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire.
So So I guess the real reason you don't put Blaziken on your list, even though the Oris version meets your criteria, is because you've got a giant water erection then. Good to know.
Now Mudkip and later to be Swampert is a very handy Pokemon to have. Only being weak to grass type moves, Swampert's high attack and move pool makes him a very powerful Pokemon. No gym leader from the Hoenn region will have the type advantage when going against Swampert.
What about moves? Swampert doesn't exactly have the deepest level up move pool, which is pretty important when you don't have all the TMs, or like was the case with the original Ruby and Sapphire, since that's the only one that counts apparently, don't get to use them an unlimited number of times. So you've really only got normal, ground, and water, and the water moves use special, not physical. While the Swampert's special stat is respectable, it's not exactly optimal. In addition, there's different forms of type advantage that you're in no way calculating. First of all, there's Winona. Even if you've got Earthquake on your Swampert by the time you face her, it's going to be completely pointless. So you have to rely on non-stab weaker moves or your stab moves that use your weaker stab. Solrock has Solar Beam, which is a move that has type advantage over Swampert. Wallace resists water. You want me to go deeper into this? Didn't think so. I think my point's been made.
Thank goodness, we have enough Boonslayer rants in this column already.
I mean, heck, even one of them can't even lay a finger on Swampert because it's immune to electric type moves. On top of that, Swampert's stab Earthquake is a force not to be reckoned with. Even though Swampert has kind of a low speed stat.
Kind of a low speed stat? Emboar is faster than it. Punch Snorlax's Scrub Lord.
For number 5, I chose Ash's Pikachu from the Pokemon anime. Now what's a top 10 starter list without Ash's notorious overpowered Pikachu? I mean, this non-fully evolved Pokemon has taken out some of the strongest Pokemon we've ever seen in the anime. From the start, we knew how special this Pikachu was, because somehow this tiny mouse managed to take down a freaking Onix with Thunderbolt. Which is kind of ridiculous because Onix is supposed to be immune to electric type moves. But whatever, anime logic.
Hey, maybe if you acknowledge that something in the anime makes absolutely no sense, you shouldn't use it as a factor as to why something is stronger.
Maybe if you put more thought and care into putting your lists together, maybe we wouldn't have to call you out on your bullcrap. Pikachu is the most inconsistent part of the anime which you acknowledge, yet no bells ring in your head that maybe this wasn't a great pick. The anime is so unreliable.
But anyways, not only that, in the early stages of the anime when Pikachu was still relatively a low level Pokemon, he was able to defeat a Dragonite in the Orange Archipelago League. A Dragonite, a pseudo Pokemon that is used by champions.
Pseudo-legendary isn't a real term.
You're expecting too much from him, Hunter. Do you really think he'd look over his script more than once?
Who needs revision when we have Smogon bullshit?
What's a pseudo Pokemon? Is that like what the Ultra Beasts are? Is Dragonite secretly a pseudo Woodo?
Not to mention that the lowest level a Dragonite could be is 55, which is pretty crazy.
Funny thing about that, in Gold and Silver Lance has 3 Dragonites that are all under level 55. Whoops.
I mean, there's a reason why Team Rocket wants to steal this particular Pikachu. It has something special that no other Pikachu has, and that is it is overpowered.
When it's convenient. Oh, but we'll get to that.
For number 4, we have Flint's Chimchar. Now this is Flint's only known Pokemon, but I wouldn't be surprised if he even needs another Pokemon, because this Infernape is extremely powerful. This powerhouse of a Pokemon was able to take down Ash's 2 strongest Pokemon with ease. Ash's Pokemon being his Infernape and Pikachu.
So it's strong because it beat Ash's Pikachu. So in that case, I'm guessing Snivy is the next entry, right? Yeah, I don't watch or care about the anime, but from what little I know and have looked up, Ash's Pikachu lost to a Snivy at which point it had beaten Darkrai before. How strong it is seems to fluctuate depending on how convenient it is for the writing team. This is the problem with using the anime as a source.
Never mind the fact that Ash's Infernape has much less experience than Flint. And as you pointed out yourself in this very video, Pikachu gets resetted, your writing is for dogs, every time he goes to a new region. It's still a goddamn Pikachu! And guess what? Pikachu loses all the fucking time!
The history behind why this Infernape is so powerful lies when Flint was just a kid. Back when Flint and Chimchar were young, they lived in a city that was full of criminals. In order to even survive in this rough environment, they had to become strong so they could defend themselves when in trouble. Going a little further ahead, against all odds, Flint was able to win the Sinnoh League with just his Monferno. His Monferno didn't even evolve until later when he became an Elite Four member. But being able to do all of this with just his Infernape is literally insane. Type disadvantage doesn't even matter to this Pokemon.
Anime logic, am I right? Seriously, your joke about how Pikachu beating on us is lol anime logic applies to Infernape not caring about type disadvantage too. So you dismiss it when it proves you wrong, but you use it when it proves you right? Dobbs logic, am I right?
Coming at number 3, we have Alan's Charmander.
Let's just ignore that you claim to have scientifically proven that Squirtle is better. Charmander is above it twice because anime. Oh yeah, Charmander is on this list twice. Another writing tip, being redundant is generally a bad idea.
Now you probably thought Ash's Charizard was powerful, but just wait until you hear what kind of beast Alan's Charizard is. Going back to how Alan even obtained his Charmander, it all started when he was Professor Sycamore's assistant. To understand more about what the Megastones were, Alan was given a Charmander to aid him on his journey to research. Throughout the years, this Charizard has fought against some of the strongest Pokemon, ranging from champions to legendary Pokemon.
Couldn't you say that about any of the starters from the games though? In any of the games, you pick your starter and much later in the game, you fight champions and legendaries, presumably with said starter. So why is this instance special exactly?
The first battle we even witnessed this monstrous Charizard was when Alan was challenged by Astrid and her Mega Absol. Of course, Alan's Charizard defeated the Absol with ease, but that's just the beginning. This Charizard has gone against Cybold's Mega Blastoise, who is in fact an Elite Four member. He wasn't able to defeat the Blastoise, but he held in long enough for it to be a very impressive feat. Alan's Charizard has also faced against Steva's Mega Metagross, which I would only assume to be the most powerful owned Pokemon in the entire Hoenn region.
So of all 3 of the Hoenn starters in the games. Yeah, you get my point.
Honestly, this Charizard probably has the best track record of any Pokemon I've ever seen. I mean, all the Pokemon you see on the screen right now has fought against this Charizard, which is pretty insane.
But you could... forget it.
Without a doubt, Alan's Charizard is among the strongest Pokemon we've seen throughout the anime. So for those reasons, I chose Alan's Charmander for number 3 on this list.
And how many of those fights were complete anime bullcrap? Because I don't know about you, in the games, Blastoise and Mega Rayquaza would have a serious advantage.
But Brooke, don't you see? You can dismiss that because anime logic!
You're right. Anime logic is the only one we should be following. Can I use JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
Naruto is best starter Pokemon confirmed!
But what about Bible Black?
For number 2, I chose Red's Poliwag for the Pokemon Adventures manga.
When you're compiling lists like this and you end up having radically different sources for these picks, it ends up being apples to oranges to door hangers. If you take from the manga, anime, the main games, and Mystery Dungeon, when these things don't connect at all besides, you know, Pokemon, how would that make it fair at all? You have an OP plot armor / nerfing with the anime, Mystery Dungeon, which shouldn't even be here, the main games, which are only the ones that make sense to accurately compare, and the manga. That really makes it hard to find a scale for it.
I was gonna say this in my final thoughts, but good God, I have gone on too many tangents in this one, so fuck it. This should have been multiple different top 10s about multiple different media. Mystery Dungeon would have been fine to include in the list about games, probably as a number 10 entry of mine, and a list about the manga and anime would have been able to be more consistent. But you're mixing entirely different forms of media, one of which is required to balance characters against each other, and one of which isn't. That's like me saying that Jace Beleren is the second most overpowered Planeswalker because Jace the Mind Sculptor is a completely fair card, and Soren is the most overpowered because he made the Hell Vault. Those two criteria have no correlation with one another, so I'm comparing apples to curtains that have pictures of apples on them.
Chandra's the best Planeswalker. Get real, Boone. I mean, she sets things on fire.
Chandra's my favorite Planeswalker that's also a professional wrestler.
Now, it's a common misconception that Red's first Pokemon from the manga was a Bulbasaur.
Okay, I don't mean to be a complete Spurglord here, but that's not how you pronounce manga, you fucking...
Yeah, it's pronounced Mago, you wannabe weeaboo.
Although Bulbasaur was technically a starter Pokemon he received from Professor Oak, Bulbasaur wasn't actually his first Pokemon. The history behind Polly, which is what Red named him, started with a near-death experience. The hero we all know and love would have died if it weren't for this Poliwag. How the story goes, Red began to drown while swimming in a pond. Polly as a small Poliwag couldn't do anything but watch this poor kid suffer. Due to being unable to save Red in his current state, Polly evolved into a Poliwhirl in order to save him, which is a pretty awesome backstory for Red's first Pokemon. Now Polly is surprisingly one of Red's weakest permanent party members in his lineup.
So you mean to tell me that one of the weakest members of a manga character's team, who doesn't get nearly as much plot immunity as characters in the anime do, mind you, is better than the strongest member of the main character of the anime's team? No, please, let's hear what he's accomplished.
He is 9 levels under Red's strongest Pokemon, which is in fact his Snorlax. From the start, this Poliwhirl was a very strong Pokemon. During Red's first gym, Polly one-shotted everything that he went up against despite being at low health. But that's kind of obvious, because Brock's gym is full of rock-type Pokemon, so Polly of course had the upper hand. But, in the Danger High Voltorb chapter, Polly goes up against Lieutenant Surge Electabuzz and Magneton. In a close fight, Polly evolves into a Poliwrath and finishes off Lieutenant Surge Electabuzz with a seismic toss with ease.
So your evidence is basically a Deus Ex Machina where the writer suddenly decided that you can evolve mid-battle because plot. This is why I don't care about the anime or manga. Everything I hear about is just ass pulls.
Not only that, Polly helped Red win the Pokemon League with his genius idea to enhance the water vapor in the air so that Red's Pikachu could defeat the opponent with a thundercloud.
Oh, so that's what he achieved. Anime bullshit evolution mid-battle and coming up with an idea which doesn't even make him actually strong. Type effectiveness factors in even less in the manga than it does in the anime. Like, holy shit. Pikachu can surf on lava in the manga! I'm pretty sure we're past the threshold of anything making goddamn sense!
And for the strongest starter Pokemon, in my opinion, is Red's Charmander from Pokemon Origins.
God, is this guy a Gen 1er or something?
2 Charmanders? This is the most cop-outy cop-out ever! And they are both from versions of the anime! What the frick? No, I've come to terms with this. No logic will ever come from this countdown. Everything will be just fine.
So let me get this straight. The reason for not including Blaziken can't be because you're only picking the most powerful version of the Pokemon, since there are 2 Charmanders. It can't be that you have a 1 per piece of media rule because you've got a fuck ton of anime entries. The only thing it really could have been is that remakes don't count, even though, you know, you're using an anime that's a more direct recreation of the games. If putting Blaziken and Greninja on the list were too easy, then just fucking say so!
He should really get a translator for that lack of communication skill he seems to have.
Now this was a very tough decision between the top 3 because they're all very strong Pokemon.
You know, except for that one you said was the weakest outside of 2 Aspel moments. But whatever.
By the way, Mega Evolution is based on the bond with the trainer, not how powerful the Pokemon is. So, how does being the first to Mega Evolve make him stronger than anyone else again?
Well, this is a thing. I'm not gonna act like this blew away my expectations with how bad it was, but, well, someone with 300k subs being this bad at writing videos, kinda not a good thing. There's a wealth of resources you could find to begin improving on that, not to mention a just as big supply of videos that do this sort of thing correctly, and or point out more common mistakes with videos like this. That's about it from me. Hey, it's a bad countdown on the internet, what are you gonna do? I'll leave the tirades to Boone on this one.
Dude, you have over 300,000 subscribers. The inconsistency is unbearable with this. How can someone with decent editing and footage have such poor scripting? Seriously, how can anyone stand it? The little errors that get past the editing phase, and then there's not thinking that maybe this many sources would create conflict. You could have become one of the few good PokeTubers if you take your time scripting and think about how each entry relates to one another. As stated earlier, this could have been 3 or 4 separate lists and it would have flowed much better. The whiplash would make anyone spin. And then there's not thinking carefully enough when you do bring in information. Totodile was a big example of this. My advice all comes down to you putting in more care into your work with information and scripting. Rereading won't kill you.
I've never really had a reason to give a fifth a fuck about your content, and to be quite honest, give even a lower percentage of fuck now. You're mixing media like a goddamn martini, and it creates an entirely inconsistent criteria. Story for one, gameplay for another, and nothing to show why something that's powerful in story is stronger than something that's powerful in gameplay, other than your onion. And I get that this list is based on your onion, but a good way to avoid backlash with an opinion list is to explain why you came to the conclusion you did in a consistent manner, which I could just call my advice and call it a day, but I've got more advice. Learn how words are constructed in a sentence. A lot of your grammar mistakes when speaking were very, very distracting. And while I'll admit that might not bother everybody, your sub count and viewership indicates that you should have a much higher standard for yourself.
What, am I supposed to end this thing? Play us out. Yes, thank you, good night. I owe interest on that end card, I'm not paying for that.
Guys, we found a dead person!
Yeah, that's great, I'm happy for you. You're liable for property damage right now. Do we need to get the Jim Ross court out again?
As God is my witness, she broke that end card in half!
Can I wait for the dead person?
Fine, I'll put the dead person over my money. Greedy fucks.
Wait, this isn't a person. This is a black furry!
How am I supposed to pay for all this shit?